All right, so we are live and in person here. All right, so hold on just a sec. Hey, Gary. All right, Kim. Let's roll. Right on, Kim. We're gonna roll with the punches. Roll with the punches. All right, so we got some fun stuff. This is of our at 12:30. All right, right on. So of our weekly, we're doing these weekly now because actually I enjoy it. Amar enjoys it too, and I think it seems like it a lot of good, valuable information that is shared, which I think is fun. So anyway, we're gonna do these every week. Wednesday at 12:30 Eastern time. Was at 9:30 your time, Amar? Pacific,
yep.
Right. And this is going to be part 2B of the 13 Wealth Management Issues Masterclass, part 2B, distribution strategies from qualified accounts. So last time we talked about qualified accounts, IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, the whole thing. And this is actually the probably the more important part for folks looking to retire, if that makes sense. I mean, we all know how to put money in. The question is, how do you take money out in the most advantageous way? And it's actually funny because Amar and I, in our pre-discussion, Amar shared a tidbit, which we're not going to go to right this second, but we're going to save for the end. So make sure you save it till the end. What's up, John? Que paso? So we're going to share a tidbit of what happened to Amar and his family working with the CPA that it could have been avoided, actually. It could have been bad. All right, so we're going to talk about distribution strategies first and foremost. Do we got to do the disclosure on your end first, Amar, or do we save that for the end?
Yeah, so I have it in the slide deck, so we can do it. Let's just get into it then.
Yep. And then, of course, if you guys have questions, save them. You can ask, but save it for the end for sure. We'll definitely save time for Q&As. Well, Qs. I'm not sure about A's, but certainly Qs.
All right, I'm sharing the screen. Do you see?
I don't. Do I got to?
It's asking me which screen now.
Oh, there we go. Okay, cool. All right, sweet. So we are sharing the screen now. South Carolina in the house. Que paso. All right, and might hear my dogs. I might have to let them in. So, Amar, I'll let you start with this, man.
Yeah, if I make this full screen, does that still show up?
Yeah. Oh, perfect. Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Right.
Fantastic. Virginia, que paso.
All right. So we're going to focus on distribution strategies. Like Josh said, this is 2B of what we talked about last week. So if you didn't catch that live stream, please watch that. There's a lot of good information there as well. These are our disclosures. Basically, everything we're talking about today is for educational purpose only. And let's just hop right into it. So we're going to start with the first way, and that's the one of the rule of thumbs that we hear is like the 4% rule, right, Josh? Like you can take 4% out of your account, and it should last you, for a long period of time. I think it's like 27 years. Is that right, Josh?
It was 33 when he did it at first, banging, and then. But so the 4% rule is just contingent on a couple things. Actually, is 60% S&P 500 and 40% 10-year intermediate bonds. I've shot that down 1,000 times a Sunday on this channel, but still, I mean, it's not a bad place to start. That's for sure.
Yeah. So, and again, these are just generalizations, right? And then we'll talk about kind of what we do here in a bit.
You have any opinions? I mean, Amar, just because that seems to be the default for everybody. You have any opinions on the 4% rule you want to share with folks? Anything jump out at you?
No. This is one of those things that, like you said, when they created this rule, interest rates on bonds are a lot higher than what we're in right now. And so, like, the biggest thing that jumps out at me is that this rule was created in an environment that's not like what we're in today.
100%.
And I think the biggest part of that is the driver of low interest rates. So,
and on top of that, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, is the idea that your spending is going to go each and every year on a linear basis with inflation. I mean, there's no. I see your desktop there, brother.
I'm gonna cancel out of this full screen because then I can't see
Okay.
anything. So is that back there?
Yep. There you go. Sweet. Yeah. Because we couldn't see. Okay. Good. So you have that up. Make that bigger, would you, Amar?
Yeah. So like, if I make it too big, then you can't see.
That's perfect right there.
Yeah.
You can't see that?
Yeah. No, then I can't see, but it's fine.
All right.
So the first way is the 4% rule, right?
Yeah.
And this is, like Josh and I said, there's positives and negatives to this, but the main drawdown of this is that, it was created at a time where interest rates were a lot higher than what they are today.
I'm getting the dogs. Keep going.
So the next thing is taking a fixed dollar amount out, right? So if you have a retirement account and you say, well, I need, $40,000 annually, and I can reassess, periodically how much I need. Well, then you can use this method. Now, this method, if you think about it, when investments are going up, you're taking a smaller percentage of your account value out per year. But when investments go down, you're taking a larger percentage out per year. And for somebody that's like on the edge of what they need and what the portfolio can sustain, this could have a huge impact, both up and down. And I'm going to go through this and answer some questions at the same time. Kim says, I want to figure out how to spend to the end. How do I figure to spend all my money? Don't want to leave any money for kids. Have a lot more than us. So, this is a good question because none of us know our longevity, right? Like that's the biggest variable in retirement planning. And so you could end up spending too much now and outliving your money, or the opposite is if you were to predecease what you're planning for, then you still left a significant amount of money on the table. So that is a good question. We'll talk about how we do it here in a bit, but I'm going to continue to.
Pablo got out. We supposedly have a fence in the backyard. Somehow Pablo's able to find a way out. Woo! So I had to chase him down the street for a second. Man, good time. So you big old knucklehead. Yesterday, Amar I was out there because it's nice out here in Georgia. I was out there messing around the garden. Couldn't find Pablo. Next thing I know, my neighbor from down the street said, hey, Josh, I got Pablo here. I said, oh, great, thanks.
Yeah.
All right, so where are we at? We're at fixed percentage withdrawals. All right, good.
Yeah, so here we're taking a fixed percentage out of a portfolio, and we're doing that every year. Now, the pros to this, it's pretty easy. You just calculate, let's say if it's 5%, 4%, like the rule. At the end, 12/31, you can calculate it and then withdraw it for that next year. The downside to some of this is it's hard to articulate your expenses on a basis that they change every year, right? Like so, for most people, if they're planning to take a trip or do anything else like that you're not going to be able to sustain a fixed percentage year in and year out.
Yeah. I always tell people if they want to guarantee not run out of money, just take a fixed percentage. It's guaranteed. It doesn't, because if you're only taking 5% a year out, well, if you have a 500,000 there, that's $25,000. If the portfolio falls to 100, here's $5,000.
Yeah.
Portfolio falls to 10, you're taking 50 cents out. You see what I'm saying? So you're guaranteed never to run out of money, but you're also not necessarily going to live the retirement you want for sure.
Yeah. And I guess like for somebody that's looking to bounce their last check, this is probably not the best way to do it, right? Because and I don't mean bounce the last check in the literal sense. I mean that like if you don't want to leave a legacy and you want to spend down the assets and not leave money on the table, if you're doing a fixed percentage withdrawal method, you're almost guaranteed to leave money on the table.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah. So a systematic withdrawal plan, right? So this is where we define like dividends and interest, and we just take those dollars out. I've seen some people also include their capital gains. So any return. So if you had $1 million portfolio and you earn 5%, then you're going to take 5% out the next year. If you earn 6%, then you're going to take 6% out the following year. So
you're saying they based on the performance of the markets? So we're saying,
yeah. So in this slide, we're just talking about dividend and interest. So we're not touching the principal, right? The principal remains back. And not touching the capital gains will then give you some inflation hedge. But the reality is that most people will look at total return. And when you look at total return, then, yes, your principal is intact, but then again, you have fluctuations. And what I find for those people that focus on dividends and interest, they're only looking at one half of the equation, right? So your total return equals your growth plus or minus, right? The fluctuation in market capital plus your dividends and interest. So if you're focused only on dividends and interest by doing this type of method, you're probably going to take more risk than you may feel comfortable with, because you're chasing yield.
And given the rates though, too, I mean, you got to have a lot of money in which to live.
This makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, $1 million portfolio is just for simplicity, and the S&P 500 is going to give you what, $22,000 a year of income.
2.2%.
And if you put in, 10-year treasuries, you're going to get $10,000 of income. I've always wanted like the idea of I'm going to live off my interest or live off my capital gains or something like that. Are there any to be had? Now, I've never like this, just living off my interest or capital gains and not touching principal. I've never understood that methodology at all. You have to have a boatload of money to be able to do that and not dip in your principal, in my opinion.
And you have to be, and if you have to be okay with this fluctuation, right? Like a lot of people are not going to go from, that's an $8,000 difference between year one and year two. I mean, that's more than $500 a month in your pocket difference, and that changes for a lot of people.
Well, then from year 2 to year 3 is 20% decline. It looks like. So I mean, you're talking. I mean, that may happen, but certainly might not happen the way you anticipate. So I've never been a fan of that either. So that's a challenge for sure. So we got 4% rule, the fixed percentage, the systematic percentage too,
and then you have the flat.
Yeah,
flat 40,000.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, like one of the things here that I think we should kind of put as a background to this is that let's assume you're getting Social Security. So this is not all your income, right? So you have other income that's more stable. Exactly. And so this is just the withdrawal strategy from qualified retirement plans. But even with that, if you have this type of fluctuation, you could probably trigger like a Medicare surcharge in 1 year and not like the next year, right? So like your Medicare premiums could also be changing if you had this amount of fluctuation.
I on the fixed amount, I've in my book I did on Wellington Fund, Retire with the Wellington Fund. I talked about taking a higher than normal percentage and never dropping it. And it's like, I think I can't remember off the top of my head what I did, but I ran a bunch of different numbers, which is pretty interesting. And I never really thought about that. But instead of taking, you got $1 million, you take 70,000 a year out. You see what I'm saying? But you never adjust that. It stays at 70,000 a year. So basically what's happening is you're starting way above where you think you might need, but as inflation kicks in, ultimately it's going to hit that 70,000 a year. It's an interesting dynamic. I have, in my book, I did a lot of research on that specific to Wellington, but it's an interesting strategy. The problem with any strategy is, it's going to work until it doesn't. And that's the problem. Even the 4% rule. I mean, people, Amar, act like the 4% rule is like from God above, and it's just not. And if people use a 4% rule today under the idea that it is, like some kind of guarantee. It's simply just not. And that's the problem with all these distribution strategies. We don't.
And one of the things that I would say is because we're in this low interest rate environment,
Yes.
and we look at inflation, right? If you look at backwards and say, hey, inflation's only been around 2%, right? But then if you factor in 08, 09, we printed a lot of money. Last year, we printed 4 times as much money. The government doesn't seem to be stopping. I don't want to say government. Central banks,
right.
All these countries are doing this printing. At some point, that's going to hit inflation, and I think that we're starting to see some of that with like energy prices, lumber, and stuff like that, agriculture. But eventually, things will get more expensive, and those inflation numbers change, and that's why it's probably really important to revisit this on an ongoing basis.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Just to be on top of it there.
I also want to point out, Cade McNitt says the government will be a silent partner. And I absolutely think one of the things about any of these rules is they overlook the fact that you're going to pay a pretty good amount of taxes if this all comes from pre-tax accounts as well. So just assume a 20% hit. So if you're taking 4% a year, and 20% of that going to the IRS, and then your state, that's what, 3.2 after taxes. So anyway, let's keep going, man. Keep going.
Yeah. The next way is like a bucket strategy. Now, this is something that we pulled from BlackRock here. So essentially, they have 3 buckets. I know a lot of people do 2 buckets, but I think the concept is pretty much the same. So one bucket holds enough cash to meet your needs for a market cycle. So remember, the average market cycle is like 7.5 years. Of that, 2 years will probably have negative returns, and then you would have the upward end of the market cycle. So here, what we're saying is that in bucket 1, you hold enough cash to go through those downturns. Bucket 2 has enough income, fixed income, securities. Here I probably disagree with this. It probably would need some like either preferred securities or convertible bonds or something tied to equities because of interest rates being so low. And then the third bucket being the remainder of your equities. So if I were to pare this down, I would just say you have 2 buckets, and the second and third bucket could be combined based off your risk tolerance and the risk tolerance that you need to reach the goals that you've put out for yourself from a planning perspective. So like your financial plan or your cash flow needs could say you need to take this amount of risk, and that should line up with buckets 2 and 3 combined. Right.
I 100% agree. Amar, one of my things I call the barbell strategy, you got basically 2 plates on a bar. One plate would be your stocks and one plate would be your cash, essentially. But I've always liked the 3 bucket strategy. The problem is actually implementing. When I do seminars, you can see people's eyes glaze over. I'm like, eh. So at the end of the day, it's kind of like what you just said. Essentially, kind of create in your mind a 2 bucket approach, but it's literally 3 buckets. And then going back to like a Wellington fund, you got cash. The Wellington fund is bucket 2 and 3. So it's basically 2 buckets as opposed to 3, if that makes sense. But I think like there are people who are really into this stuff. And like my man Fritz Gilbert, folks up at Blue Ridge, who writes the Retirement Manifesto blog. And he's got all these spreadsheets, all this data, all this. And I'm like, dude, that makes my head spin. And he likes it, he enjoys it. But I don't think I think a lot of people, they want a little bit more simple. But nope.
Yeah. And then Kim just put up a comment here. My realtor sent me an email yesterday saying it's a good time to buy.
Well, you can't. You can't. Wait. Yeah. You can't highlight. Only I can highlight these comments.
Oh, you can highlight. Yeah.
Yeah. Keep going.
No, I just said that was funny because I have a client that lives in Nevada, and he basically said if you're selling your house and you're getting the asking price, that's like a slap in the face. And so like there's low inventory. People are not moving because of COVID, right? They don't want to go move, and so
because we got company here. Hey everybody, on our Wednesday live stream, same people from last week, daughter and friend. Y'all can stay here. Hold on just a second. All right. Amar, you ever heard of a guy named Graham Stephan on YouTube by chance? You ever seen that guy's videos?
I'm sorry, no.
California to Las Vegas. Dude, this was nuts. He did a video where he was, I guess, I don't know how it works, but you got to get registered in Nevada before you can, before you leave California. I don't know how it works. But anyway, he did a video where he's going to the DMV to register, and there was a line like miles long, dude. It was crazy. I was like, this is how many people are leaving California, going to Nevada, and just wrapped around this. It was nuts. And I was like, holy crap. And point being is going back to Kim, because she lives in California, and all these people are leaving, but there are people buying. There's got to be two sides of the trade. So it's like, yes, people are leaving, but these people are selling their houses to someone to buy them too, if that makes sense. So there's always two sides of trade. I thought it was very, very interesting.
Yeah. I mean, this would be a totally tangent to this retirement withdrawal strategy conversation. But even for California, like people are saying, move out of California, they're taxing and everything else like that. So individuals decide to move, but somebody's buying their house that they're selling here.
That's what I'm saying.
So
in New York City, Gary says he wish he would have never contributed to a tax deferred account. He understands the tax benefit of the front end, but now he has to deal with tax ramifications. Man, I could not agree more. That's I mean.
So that's the important part of tax planning, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to look at your whole lifetime and when do you want to pay taxes? And unfortunately, there's too many variables that you could get cut up on. So let's go.
Where are you a realtor? So Gary's a realtor himself. What state are you in, Gary? All right, go ahead, Amar. You were saying, and I rudely interrupted you.
No, I was just going to go to what I want to show is kind of like how we do it at Client First Capital.
Yes.
And then we can come back to this. So I'm going to hit stop sharing. I'm going to bring up my other worksheet here. And
Alberto says there's a shortage of houses in California. The demand is high, and saying, man, 100%. It's only going to be even more shortage, and the reason for that is simply because your freaking stupid governor and your legislatures, they put limits on building, freaking idiots. And so as such, we want affordable housing, but we don't want people to build houses. Well, how are you going to get affordable housing, fool? And I'm not saying my man Alberto's a fool. Alberto was a professional wrestler under the nickname the Puerto Rican Pummeler. That's what it was, the Puerto Rican Pummeler. He'd give you a flying elbow off the top rope and everything. It's not true. I just made that up. All right, so
can you see my screen? You're not sharing. You have to share it.
Yeah, so this is pretty good. I actually, there we go. I like this a lot. So,
all right. So at Client First Capital, one of the things that we want to do is align your values to your goals, to your actual expenses, right? And sometimes, this it's a hard effort. It's kind of like I don't want to say it's like a Tony Robbins type event, but essentially it is, right? You have to look back and identify things that are important to you, and then kind of connect the dots to where you want to spend money. And the reason why this is so important is because with financial planning and retirement planning, we don't know how much longevity we have, right? And what we have found is people that put pen to paper, a dream book or aspirational list or just goals in general, they're more likely to do the things that they want to do, number one. Number two, they're spending their cash flow. A higher percentage of their cash flow is going to things that are important to them. And number three, they continue to have a sense of purpose throughout retirement. And Josh, maybe you can kind of echo some of this. When you work with somebody that's like, let's say 50, and they're thinking about the day that they're going to retire, they have a laundry list of things that they want to do, right? And from an advisor's perspective, you've seen this, right? Like they have this, I want to travel, I want to play golf, I want to sail, whatever it is, right? Like they have all these things. And then when that same individual is, let's say, 15 years into retirement, right? So let's say they retired at 60, so they're now 75.
Yeah.
They're just looking to,
chill.
Either essential expenses, and maybe they have some discretionary expenses, right? if you have an advisor that's saying that, like, hey, let's divide how much do you need per month, and these are your essential and discretionary, you're overpaying. You're not doing it right. You really need to re-engage and get the value process of making sure that you're doing things that align with your values. So we created this worksheet, and if you email me, I can send you this worksheet, or if you put a comment in one of my videos, then I can find you that way as well. But
we'll just go to client first. I mean, you go to I'll put the website. What's hold on a second, Amar. I'll just put the website up here too. clientfirstcap.com. We'll put the can I put that on the thing here, Amar? Or does the compliance? Sure. Okay. Yeah. So if you this is actually pretty good. I look, man, the reason this is important is it actually gets you to take pen to paper, if that makes sense. And I think it's critical. I think a lot of people in their mind, they have this idea, but then when they actually have to sit down and actually think about it, it's huge. So just, email Amar, he'll give this. He's not going to solicit you. He's not going to sell you Bitcoin. Just email him and he'll get it to you.
So, and we called it the Next Decade Planning Worksheet because right now, everybody with COVID, we're stuck at home. We can't travel, can't do anything. So let's put pen to paper now. So then the next decade is we're doing things also from a portfolio standpoint that we're creating liquidity at the time that you need those funds. We're tracking with cash flow and everything else. So first we ask clients to identify their top values, what's important to you, right? And then if you have some additional comments, you can put here. Essentially, and here we gave a list of samples, but we really want you to identify your own, right? Yeah. So the next part is like, well, what do you want to do with your time, right? Yeah. So if money's not an issue, what do you want to do with, some people want to volunteer. Some people have hobbies like painting, art, crafting. So some people want to go back to school. I have one client that I work with that lives in France 3 months out of the year. And so she's learning French, so like while she's here, she's learning French and she goes to practice it while she's there.
You know what I'd be doing if I lived in France, Amar?
What?
Making French bread. Oh.
I thought you were going to say something with wine.
I know, I'm a teetotaler, man, so nothing with wine, but bread. Oh, man.
So identifying the things that you want to do. So that's absolutely. So step one is identifying your values. Step two is what do you want to do? Step three is really identifying who do you want to do this with, right? So,
it better be your spouse if you're married.
But you could want to do different things with different people, right? So like, I'm just giving an example. Is one of my clients takes his grandchildren out and they do a fishing trip every year, right? And it's all the grandchildren and him and nobody else. And that's something that's important to him. So identifying who you want to do these things with. And then the last question, so this is step 4, is how do you maintain your health in terms of physical health, mental health, and emotional health, so that you're able to do these things. So like this is the self-care aspect of it. And then the last question that I think is really good is that let's say you meet the proverbial doctor and that doctor says, hey, you only have a few years to live. How does that impact everything that we just talked about, right? So this is creating a priority of what things you want to accomplish. So this gives us a natural list of these are the things that are important. These are the people that we want to do it. And these are the top 3, top 4, top 5, whatever it goes. And then we turn this into, how do we put this into your financial plan?
Well, let me just real quick. I did a video the other day on the emotional aspect of retirement planning as well. And I think this could get overlooked a lot, actually. There's a lot of emotional, I don't want to say trauma, but a lot of emotional baggage that comes with leaving the workplace. Is not just financial, it's literally emotional. Like, what do you do? And the reason I say that, Amar, is I had a guy who had worked 31 years in the same company since he got out of school. I don't know if it's high school or college, but either way, he went into this company as a young man. He comes out 31 years later, and he's just is emotional to him. You see what I'm saying? And I think the point about an exercise like this is to kind of start building that muscle in your brain that says, okay, this is happening. This is happening. But it can't just be something that you're going from. It has to also be something that you're going to, or at least have some kind of plan of action. The emotional roller coaster is significant. It's not. Even Amar and I, when we left USAA, I mean, we had a secure job at USAA, making big money, but big money for me. It was a good gig, you know what I'm saying? And we both left there to start our own businesses. So there's a lot of emotional baggage that goes with this, but we both went to something. And I think if a lot of people, if they don't go through this exercise and they're just leaving some crappy old job, going to the unknown, that's kind of scary. So this is where taking the pen to paper, not just thinking about it, but actually putting it on paper is critical.
Yeah. And I think, we look at it as like, while you're working, you have these, I have to do.
Yes.
And these are I get to do, right?
Yeah,
so the frame of changing your perspective is really important with some of these. The thing that I would say is that, I've been an advisor since 2004. I've seen probably a couple thousand people retire and go through the process.
Yes.
Engineers, right? Like if I had a client that's an engineer that's retiring, I would give them one of those day planner type books, right, to figure out what they want to do and put pen to paper, just like we talked about. It's hard. It's an emotional journey, and I would say my average age of my client now is 73, and so I have 4 clients that are in their 90s, and talking to them and looking back, and using our example, you retire at 60, and then at 75, you start just looking at the paycheck that you're covering. But at 75, there's a good probability that you still have another 10 years plus.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so how do you want to spend those times? And the other thing is that, like, health, we don't control health, right? Yes. I mean, you can do as much as you can to be healthy, but we don't control longevity. And those are 2 separate things. And so
they're not working 100%. Especially if you've done it your whole life.
Yeah. And then where I was going with that is that, you want to look back and say that you're able to do the things that you wanted to do, right? And not have regrets. So that's this part. So this is how we tie it into the financial plan. So we identify the priority, identify the timeline, any costs associated. If this is like a family vacation and you're going to be paying for your family, that there could be some significant costs. And then we say, what's the next best step to actually getting this done? Right. And so we identify goals in terms of short term, 1 to 3 years, and then we use our longer term goals as decade priorities.
And so what we're doing here is that, as we were saying, kind of like a bucket for distributions. I got a bucket to cover these expenses. Well, we also have goals for this short term, this long, if that makes sense. And I actually think that's pretty important too, to have some goals set up. Like in my planning, people always say, I got to get a new car. When do we have to get a new car? 3 to 5 years. Okay, so we need 3 to 5 years. We know we're going to need some money to cover that at some point. So that would kind of flow with that, the first or second bucket of the retirement plan, if that makes sense. It doesn't have to be that specific, but it's helpful. Say, look, these are my goals that I want to accomplish. And, if you don't do it, that's maybe that's good, maybe it's bad. But, like for instance, the lady wants to speak French. I want to speak French. Well, hell, I want to speak Spanish, but I'll never speak Spanish. I can't roll my R's. I'm a gringo from the first degree. You know what I'm saying? So because I can't roll my R's, it's not happening. Trust me, I've tried. I even interviewed a lady on this channel to try to roll my R's. Still not happening. But if you put it into a methodology, say in 6 months, I want to be able to, I don't know, bake my first piece of French bread. And in 12 months, I'll bake whatever the hell French people eat, which I know is pretty good. It helps you, man. It helps you identify this. I think it's critically important, actually.
Yeah, and so that's how we do it. And then going back to our presentation, the next thing is net unrealized assets.
All right, so here's huge. So let me just put that up. Oh yeah, I got to put it up. There you go. All right, so I get this question a lot about NUA. But I tell you, if NUA, net unrealized appreciation, is something on your mind, you better freaking have somebody you can talk to who knows what the hell they're doing. And we're going to share with you an example right now. And this is why Amar went into not went into this business, why he started specializing this. Because I've heard cases like this 1,000 times a Sunday, where advice is, I hate to even say advice, where opportunities are overlooked because I think ignorance, frankly. It's kind of like, don't do any Roth conversions. It doesn't make sense. And the reason people say that is because they don't know what they don't know, frankly. And all right, Mark, go into this. Actually, I don't want to say this doesn't quite infuriate me, but the idea that someone wasn't paying attention enough to see both sides, it kind of makes me mad. So go in.
Yeah. So what net unrealized appreciation is essentially taking your company stock, that cost basis in there, and paying ordinary income taxes on that dollar amount, and then removing it from your qualified retirement plan. So in terms of distributions, what you're doing is reducing your future RMDs, because it's based off your 1231 balance on the remaining of your qualified plan. So in this example, what we're showing here is an extreme version of that, and assuming 100% of your qualified retirement plan is in your company stock. Mm-hmm. So let's say you have a 401k valued at $300,000, and your cost basis to buy that stock is $50,000. So what we're saying here is that you could take that $50,000 as your cost basis and pay ordinary income taxes on that, and remove $300,000 from your qualified retirement plan, and just pay ordinary income on that $50,000. Then you will have these assets in a taxable account. And if you decide to sell or do anything with the company stock, you would then be subject to long-term capital gains from that point forward. Now, the biggest, I guess, I don't want to call it hurdle or concern I have is that most advisors won't even bring up NUA strategy. Uh-huh. And then the ones that do will automatically say, all right, now that we're out of your IRA, let's sell everything and put it in our model. Yeah. Right. And then just create another taxable event, like a huge taxable event. Right. And, if you are going to do the net unrealized appreciation method, I think for most people, they like their company stock and they would want to keep some portion in the company stock. Exactly. So you don't have to do all of it, right? You can do an NUA with just half your company stock or a quarter or, whatever percentage you want. You don't have to do 100%. And when you do that, you can use things like options to secure the value, to protect against downside. I had a client that retired from AT&T, and he loved AT&T stock. I mean, he's been there for 30 plus years, and AT&T pays a great dividend, and he wanted to keep it. And UA, what we did is use the dividend to buy options to protect on the downside, right? Mm-hmm. So, and we kept, the important part here is we kept the position. We didn't sell the position to re-diversify into stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, whatever it is. Because if you're going to do that, the odds are you may want to have that in your qualified plan and not do the NUA and rebalance within your qualified retirement plan or IRA, because there's no taxable event there, right? So the key here is that I believe there has to be some desire to keep the company stock.
I cannot stress this enough, because our business, and I'm the first to bash it. Did you hear what Amar said that? He said there, the guy liked his AT&T stock. Now, we can argue that's idiotic. We can argue that's the best. It doesn't matter. It matters what he wants to do as a client. His emotions are involved in AT&T stock. Regardless of what you think about it, matters not. Kind of like with ExxonMobil. I told you about all the people in Houston. I've done a couple of videos with people in Houston and who have ExxonMobil. They love the company. They love the dividend. So what you do is you don't just say, well, if you're an idiot, we're going to sell our ExxonMobil stock. That would be stupid. It's not a good move because there's emotional attachment to that. So Amar says you can freaking NUA it. And this is, I don't really do this. I've never done it. So, by all means, I'm not your guy for this. But you take the dividend and you buy options. What, you buy put options? Is that what it is, Amar?
Yeah, you buy protection.
You buy protection.
Like insurance on the downside.
And so, this isn't rocket science, but it's a little bit more, crafty than what most of, I'd say 95% of advisors are doing. But it keeps the downside protection. It keeps you to get the upside, and the dividend is basically paying for it, probably more so than the cost of the protection. What a friggin' great strategy! And you're moving OI, ordinary income, to long-term capital gains. Not to at least consider that doesn't make sense. Unless you just can't stand your company stock. Like, man, I can't stand Elon Musk. I got Tesla stock. I'm selling the whole thing. And then that's still, anyway, might still be a good strategy for it. Anyway.
Yeah, and like something like that where there's a lot of volatility in the company stock, right?
Yeah.
If you feel that way, then don't do the NUA strategy and rebalance within your qualified retirement plan. You don't have to own the company stock, right?
Amar and I were talking about this, and just he's going to do a specific video on when are you doing this video on this, Amar?
Yeah, I'm going to try to do it next week. So my dad worked for Hamilton Sunstrand, which was bought by, I think one part was bought by Raytheon, the other part was bought by UTC, United Technologies Corporation. So, when my dad retired, he had a lot of company stock, and not a lot, but a lot for them. And I'm going to do a video on it, how the CPA told my dad not to do an NUA, and how that ended up costing them probably close to $60,000 to $70,000 in taxes, or in the future.
Yep, 60 to 70,000 that Uncle Sam Sniffy Joe has, or you hate the Trumpster. Either way, that the government has. That they did not have to have because the CPA was, and I think he was ignorant, Frank. I don't think he was negligent. I just think he did not. I think what happens with CPAs, my wife works at CPA firms. They get so flipping busy, man, during tax season. They're just trying to put out fires. They're not trying to protect, build a moat. They don't have time to build a moat. They're just trying to put out the fires that have already started. And
I often say that CPAs do tax work. They don't do tax planning.
Yes.
Right? So tax work is essentially, what do we do today with the variables that we know?
Yep.
Tax planning is like looking into the future. So that's like, the widow's death trap, right? Yep. CPAs are not really engaged with Roth conversions because they're not thinking about, hey, there's a good likelihood that one spouse predeceases the other spouse, right? They're not looking at NUA strategies because if you were, you would know you get a step up in cost basis, right? If you held on to the security. And so it's just frustrating. Anyways, and I'm going to do a video on that, a little video on NUA, the problems that we faced with my family, and then kind of some of the solutions and key takeaways. So,
Mark, what you should do a premiere on that. We'll talk it offline, but a premiere is okay. We'll talk about it. That way people can ask questions while your video's going and you're just answering questions. Premiere is pretty cool. We'll share that with you. But that's next week. So make sure you subscribe to his channel too.
That's what I was going to end with this. If you want to see that video, please subscribe to his channel.
His channel is Client First Cap Learning. Cap Learning on YouTube. So, I think I spelled that wrong. But hey, Client First
Capital Learning. Yep. It comes up there too when you're typing something in.
I'll get in there. Keep going about that right there.
So the next thing is that if you're retiring early, before age 59 and a half, a lot of people feel like you can't do that because you won't have access to your retirement funds. Well, that's simply not true. The IRS has a code called the 72T distributions. And essentially, you can have access to the funds before you're 59 and a half, as long as you do one of these three methods of taking funds out, and you avoid the 10% penalty. So the first method is you start taking RMD distributions. So the IRS table has this long table, and you can just start taking the distributions. The second method is if you take a fixed amortization. So a lot of people will do like a immediate income annuity for like 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, whatever the shortest duration that they can get that matches up with the 72T rule. And so when you do that, you have to take it for a minimum of 5 years or until you reach 59 and a half, but you have to do which one is longer, right? So if you're 55, that's like the ideal, because the 5 years equals to 59 and a half. If you're 58, you're gonna have to do this, 58, 59, all the way to 63, right? So 5 years is gonna be longer than you turn 59 and a half.
I'm not the usually biggest fan of this, frankly. Have you done a lot of these?
Let me explain. Yeah, we have, and the rationale is between the point that you retire and when Social Security hits, you have this window of opportunity where you can control your tax brackets from that point into the future.
Yeah.
And so that is important. So like if we can take some cash flow out, which you probably need, right, in the earlier years, you're reducing your RMD post 72.
Yeah. No, 100%. I in terms of the practicality though, I've been around for a long time. Probably 5 times have actually done that. But that's the thing about financial planning, Amar, is that every person is unique. They all have unique needs and unique opportunities that exist in their own financial plan. That's the whole point about this boiler maker. What the hell is that? Purdue, the one size fits all. It's
boilerplate.
Huh?
Boilerplate.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, boilermaker. Anyways, one size fits all thing. It just does not. And it actually is frustrating. And unfortunately, it's not just our industry. A lot of people on the potential clients, they think they have it all figured out too. And you're just like, I'm telling you, man, especially a lot of engineer types. I'll tell you right now, a lot of engineer types, and I deal with lots of engineers, lots of IT people. Love them to death. They're the best clients ever. The ones I deal with, they'll recognize I don't have this all figured out, and I'd like to know more, and I'm willing to pay a fee to figure this out. But there's a lot of people who say, no, I don't need, I got it all. And I'm like, but yeah, I guarantee you don't. In fact, if you ever read the Bogleheads blog, you'll see tons of people are so smart. Just ask them, they'll tell you. And then I guarantee, and I don't, but I guarantee you said, hey, anyone here have a durable power of attorney? They'll be like, oh, yeah. That's crazy. What else we got? Boilerplate, right on, Mark. Right here. So then Harry said, I thought I'd take an annuity before age 59. It had to be for your lifetime. He said, I thought if you take an annuity before 59 and a half. Yeah, I remember Harry actually emailed me that before. Have you heard that before? I hadn't heard that. I couldn't find any confirmation on it.
And if you're doing a 72T distribution, if you're coding it as 72T distribution, it just has to meet these rules. Okay. Sometimes annuity carriers will only allow you the option for lifetime income or joint life. It depends on the annuity carrier, not the IRS rules, right? The annuity carrier can have specific or have limited options to distribution.
Good question. I'm sure this is, I don't know. What's your take on this, Amar?
Yes, of course. Yes, Chuck, you're right. In fact, a lot of the times when we're doing a strategy like this, you probably want to carve out the amount that you're going to take and put it into a separate IRA and then deplete that IRA. So that way you also have paperwork to show, right? Like we have a paper trail to show that you did those simple equal periodic payments.
That's so the question was, can you take it, the SEP, just because in case people are just listening, from one IRA but leave the others alone? And the answer is yes. That's a great point. It's not aggregation. That's fantastic. I did not know that. K McNitt says engineers are the best. I
have a degree in electrical engineering and computer science.
I'm sure K McNitt is not an engineer, right? Does that wrap up this deck here?
Yeah, that's the deck. That's so I was gonna.
You want to talk this? You want to talk about this, Amar? You can see what Anthony Harper had written.
Yeah. So that's called in-service distribution, and that's based off of your 401k plan documents. So if your 401k plan documents allows for an in-service distribution, then you can definitely do it. And I know Fidelity's 401k, they have this advisor portal. So even, nobody, you can, within Fidelity's 401k, you can open up an IRA and have both of them connected and just do it yourself.
Actually, I think he's talking about is like the 72T, that as long as you separate from service when you're 55 or below or over, and you leave your employer sponsored plan, you have access to that 401k money, 403B, or without a penalty.
Yeah,
that's
it's going to be up to the plan docs, right? Yeah. And most 401ks don't want that liability or that service related stuff, so they'll tell you to roll it over to an IRA, and then you would have to do it.
It's funny. I was talking to a guy today. It's the exact same thing. I say, dude, the problem with it is that the IRS is actually quite liberal, and a lot of these things is the 401k provider itself, that they don't want the liability a lot of times, because if they got sued because they screw something up, and they just don't want that. So it really depends on the planning doc. In this guy's case, he had I think his 401k was with Empower or something like that. So I said, well, they don't care. But there are some plans, especially smaller companies, where the 401k provider would be the company itself. And once you separate from service, they don't want nothing to do with it. They say, get on out of here. We don't want the liability for sure. 72T, same amount for 5 years only, but it's not only 5 years. That's the problem. So Amar, you want to answer Al's question?
So 59.5 or 5 years, whichever is grerer, right?
Whichever is longer, exactly.
So if you're 50, you retire at 50, and you want to take distributions for 10 years, then you're not going to be able to take distributions for 5 years. You're going to have to take it for 10.
That's the problem. If you're 50 years old and you do a 72T, it's 59 or whichever's longer. 5 years, whichever's longer. What about Roth ladder? You want to elaborate on that, Swanee? So Roth, I'm not exactly sure what. Smartest engineers are the ones who got out. Oh, so Mars.
I got kicked out. My story is I used to work for Qualcomm down here in San Diego, and my role was integrating the RF design between different cell phone manufacturers, different towers, and then different UIs. And my job got outsourced to India, and I'm Indian. So I got into financial planning, and it's all worked out.
What's the language in India? Indian or something like that? Or what's the language?
There's like thousands of different
languages. What's the primary one though? Like
Hindi.
Hindi. Do you speak that?
No.
Do your folks? Did they?
Well, we're from the state of Gujarat. So my great-great-grandparents are from India. The rest of my family is from Kenya, and I was born in London. And then
you were born in London?
Yeah.
I gotcha. Right on. Cool.
Do you want me to put up the slide for the future videos so people can see? I saw some comments here that people didn't know this was a series. So I just want to put this up here.
Please do. Absolutely. There we go.
So we're working our way through this. So we started with investment. I guess was a control plus sign. Is that making it better?
Yeah. One more. There you go. That's good. Yeah.
So we started with investments, and we talked about some common mistakes around investments. Then we did qualified retirement plans 2A, and then we just did 2B, which is the distributions from qualified retirement plans. One of the things that Josh, you need to talk about is the Roth, the spousal. If you have a Roth IRA.
All right. So let's. I'll acknowledge an error, and I'm not quite sure it's an error, but I will acknowledge. But anyway, what are we talking about next week? We were talking about
stock compensation. So if you have, this was our kind of segue from NUA to concentrated positions to stock compensation. So if you're an executive, or if you get stock option, if you have an employee stock purchase plan where you can have company stock, so we're going to be talking about some interesting things around that. And we may break that one up into 2 parts as well, because now we're doing these weekly. But I think, Josh, you put this in the show notes or somewhere, but you can see, future weeks we'll be talking about insurance. So here we'll start with, property casualty type insurances. Then we'll go into disability life insurance, health insurance.
We'll go over these. There's no time. I mean, Amar, believe it or not, this is enjoyable for me and Amar. We like doing it. We think people are getting. I mean, there's 120 people on here right now on an afternoon. Well, not afternoon over there, but and then we get thousands of views, and so obviously someone's enjoying or getting something out of this. So we like doing it, actually. And like I said, the whole point was to educate, entertain with pictures of dogs, and then hopefully get Amar's channel to grow so we can get some of that sweet YouTube financial money or money from the advertisers. But so anyway, the point being is, even though we say 13, doesn't mean it's going to be 13 weeks. It could be, 130 weeks. Like insurance, there's so much stuff to talk about insurance, disability, life insurance, never mind property casualty. Each of those may or may not be its own unique thing. So every Wednesday at 12:30 Eastern time, be here, or you're just not cool. All right, so let me give you my mea culpa. Is that what's called? So Amar and I had a discussion, and we threw fist. And we said, Amar said to inherit a Roth, there's RMDs. And hanging my head in shame, he was right. There are RMDs and an inherited Roth for a spouse. My saving grace was there's very few times you'd want to have an inherited IRA, a Roth IRA, if you're a spouse. You'd want to just roll that to your own. So I was kind of confused. Well, I wasn't confused. I was thinking inherited Roth, why would you do that? But literally by letter of the law, Amar was right. And I never want to say that again. Amar was right. If you have an inherited IRA, it is subject to RMD. A Roth or traditional, it does not matter. Inherited accounts are subject to RMD, spouse or not.
And with the Secure Act, remember there's only 3 different types of beneficiaries. There's qualified designated beneficiary, a designated beneficiary, and then just call it other. Yeah. I'm forgetting the technical term, but they all have different distribution schedules, right? And then that's, the Secure Act, the big thing that changes, your children are limited to 10 years. So non-spousal beneficiaries are limited to 10 years, right? Yep. And then there's a list of other qualifying things that would apply to that as well.
Couple of comments here. Telecom has been brutal on engineers in the U.S., says Chuck. Most people in India don't understand each other from different parts of India. That's what I hear. You talk about a conglomerate in the United States with the South, the North, you guys out there in the West. Hell, India is like a total hodgepodge of different ethnicities, isn't it? Okay, so here's our Roth ladder, doing yearly conversion from traditional IRA over 5 years and pulling yearly amount that was converted. I don't know. You have anything? I don't know. Why pay the tax and then take the money out 5 years from now? Seems to me, I don't know. The whole point about doing the Roth conversion is to let the money to grow tax free because of the converted money. That's so. Any thoughts on that, Amar?
Yeah, I don't know if I really understand this, because most people, if they're in the same tax bracket, it's probably 5+ years to break even from the taxes that you paid up.
Exactly.
Right? So and then to take that benefit when you break even, and then just take the money out.
I
don't know.
I completely agree. It's like, if you're going to do the Roth, do it so you can get the multiple years of tax-free compounding growth for sure. Okay, so Al says good series, we're supporting these. Boeing just outsourced 11,000 jobs. James says the big Palace, is that a Greek name, James? James says the big companies are not like you guys. They just fit you in a group based on age and 10 questions. Yeah, I tell you, one of the things about they have these risk tolerance questionnaires, and look, everyone is going to fill them out at some point. We all know they're silly though. There's been studies that said a true risk tolerance question should be, I think it's like 80 questions or something like that, but no one's going to fill that out. So it's kind of like the companies, in some regard, they do the best they can do to fit the regulators, if that makes sense. Yeah, Roth is not end all. I completely agree. Amar, let me just, for 2 seconds, I'll give you the mic back. And anyone who needs to get off, you can. But I was talking to this guy today, and he works in California, as a matter of fact. I got a ton of California clients, which would make sense because California is such a big state. But we're talking. I said, remember, the point about Roth conversions isn't so much for the conversion. It's really to reduce the amount of pre-tax money that you're going to leave to your surviving spouse. So he was all hot, and not really, but I get a lot, like I'm hot to trot on doing Roth conversions because the end result's the Roth. I said, no. The end result is we're trying to get that IRA or 401k or 403b reduced so that by the time you hit Social Security, required minimum distribution age, you have less in which to pay tax on. And secondly, if you're married, that you're leaving your spouse not the widow's tax trap. So even in this case, a guy said, don't do Roth conversions, just pull the money out and pay the tax in order to pay off your mortgage. And this has nothing to do with this meeting here today, but remember, the Roth conversion isn't the panacea. What we're trying to accomplish is to reduce your IRA, your pre-tax money, and going back to NUA. It's a wonderful way to do some of that as well. There's lots of different tools, but they don't all fit as cleanly as we might like to see. Oh boy, he stinks. The COVID shot, having a hard time getting people coming for a shot and appointment. Okay. Getting out here, have 2 shots. Okay. Having a hard time to get people to come in for an appointment. Yeah. How about the tax trap avoid? Yeah, we just kind of talked about that. Absolutely. But don't forget, if you have if you have company stock, if you work like going back to Exxon or AT&T or Delta, if you got a lot of company stock, man, if you're not thinking at least about NUA, I think you're making a mistake. I really, really do.
Yeah, and two other points with the NUA with company stock is that let's say you work for Wells Fargo, right? And that company stock has had a lot of volatility, or Boeing, right, where it's gone up and down. And you have a lot of stock. When it's down, you could gift those shares to your children, right? Because now you're gifting the same amount of shares, but lower value. It's less of a, you don't have to file a 7. If you have to file a 709, it's less. But then the growth goes on their side of the balance sheet, right? And so that could be another benefit of the NUA versus the Roth conversion piece.
Could not agree more. And here's Carl. If already taken, that's a weird picture, man. If already taken Social Security, does it make sense to transfer all IRA over? Anytime I hear the word all, I say, no, hang tight there. So let's say to transfer some IRA over to Roth within a few years, so future Social Security is not taxed. Yeah, it makes sense. The question is, does it make sense for you? And we wouldn't know until we actually crunch the numbers there. But yes, it absolutely makes sense, but it might not make sense for you for sure. So fire away, guys. Questions, thoughts, comments. Appreciate y'all being here for sure. Again, every Wednesday at 12:30, we'll be on here, and we'll just keep doing it until we get no one showing up. It'll be fun. And,
it'll just be you and I talking.
Yeah, like we do all the time anyway. I'm a few months from retirement. I did not expect to need to plan for my parents approaching the end of their lives. So it sounds like he is needing to plan for parents approaching the end of their lives.
Sounds like he's part of that sandwich generation. Parents that they're depending on some financial help, and also maybe if he has children,
Well, we're dealing with that with my mom, and she's we were actually, it's my brother and his wife in Richmond, who are, my sister's running with she's in New Jersey, we're in Georgia, my brother and his wife are in Richmond, and my mom's in Virginia. Anyway, so we were all kind of working together to try to get her, if she needed, assisted living or a nursing home. And it's a friggin' pain in the butt, man. No other way around that. It's a pain. My mom is cognizant, which is good, but she's not physically capable of helping herself, if that makes sense. So it's a challenge. And it's, my brother's got 4 kids. My sister's got 2 kids. I got 4 kids, so there's 10 Scanlons running around on top of having to help my mom out. And it's, now financially, She's okay, thankfully. But if she was in a financial dire strait, that'd be tough, man, because none of us are. I mean, look, man, when you got, well, you know how it is, Amar. You got 2 kids. Kids don't come cheap today. You know what I'm saying? The stork drops them off with a big IOU, that's for sure. And it's, I wouldn't change. I wouldn't have it any other way. But my goodness. All right. So let's see what else we got here. Fix my notifications. So I'm not sure how. I'm not sure how notifications work. I don't know even if they do, but appreciate Dr. Horton. He fixes notifications to be alerted when you go live next time. Yeah, and please do that for me, because I will go live on a whim. I enjoy the live streams. Actually, it's fun. And Dr. Horton, his brother is a Reverend Horton. Reverend Horton. Let's see. Dan says you can do Roth laddering to get access to retirement funds early before 59 and a half. I don't like the Roth laddering stuff. If you're going to spend that money in a quick amount of time, I'm not a big fan of that.
It would have to be something that's calculated, but like just back of the napkin type thinking is that the more time those initial principal dollars stay in the Roth,
yes,
more compounding you get, and therefore the more tax-free money you'll have later when you need.
Or what this guy says is, why not? What you say? But I said, why not just do the 72T instead of doing the Roth conversions? It just seemed to make sense to me. All right, but Mar, how many years do you plan for bucket system? You said 8-year cycle, but missed exactly your thoughts on time. So you want to talk?
Yeah, so like everybody's different, and how much you keep on cash, probably really depends on your risk tolerance, right? So if you're really aggressive in your growth investment bucket, you probably need a larger cash reserve because you're going to have more volatility. And if you're very conservative here, then you could probably get by with 1 year or less in terms of cash reserves. So in bucket 1. So a market cycle is on average 7.5 years.
Yeah, 7.5 years.
And so you should plan for at least 2 years to be negative. I mean, that at a bare minimum, from a planning perspective, you should have a safe place to access liquidity for at least 2 years.
Could not agree more. I at a bare minimum 2 years of liquid stuff. Not the Wellesley fund is not that 2 years, if that makes sense. A lot of people, Mar, will say the Wellesley is 40% stocks, friends. You know what I'm saying? It was down 10% in 2008, and from top to bottom, it was down like 18%. That's not. That's while that wasn't the 54% of the S&P 500, you still lost a fifth of your capital at a bare minimum 2 years, without question. When are you going to change? Okay, so that's a good question. So I use Right Capital. Amar, what do you use for your return inputs into your e-money? You want to?
So we use e-money. We use we subscribe to research for our inputs, right? So we pay these research analysts firm in New York City, and they give us numbers, and then we use those numbers to plug into e-money. So in terms of stock returns, inflation, I mean, there's a whole laundry list of numbers that we have to input. So I wouldn't
ballpark on the S&P 500. What's your?
To be honest, I don't know. I would have to look it up.
All right. So I'm not changing them, Jim. So Amar, where this question is coming from, I use the Vanguard Capital Models Market, the VCMM, and they're always on the pessimistic, probably too strong. They're on the conservative, exactly. So Vanguard came out in their most recent one for their 4 10-year projections in 2000 that they just came out with a couple weeks ago. 6% on stocks, 1.25%, if memory serves, on bonds, and the 1.25% inflation. And I was like, I can't get around that inflation. I just can't. I'm going to still keep the federal funds target rate, which is 2%. Not the federal funds target rate, but the Federal Reserve target rate of 2%. And so at the end of the day, I'm still actually more conservative than Vanguard, and here's why. 6% on stocks, 1.25% on inflation. That's a net of 4.25%. Right? No, 6% on stocks, 1%, 1.25%. That's a net of 4.35, 4 and 3/4. That's it. So if Vanguard's using 6 on stocks and 1 1/4 on inflation, their net is 4 3/4. I'm using 6.5% on stocks, and the Federal Reserve target, which is 2, which is net of 4.5% of inflation, if that makes sense. So I can't get around a 1 1/4 inflation rate. It's not in my ability to do so, especially when we have a Federal Reserve Board that says they want 2%. So FYI, Jim, appreciate it. I'm not changing them. So I got 2% on bonds, 2% on inflation, and 6.5% on stocks, FYI. And so it's still less aggressive than Vanguard, believe it or not, which is crazy because Vanguard is quite, again, I don't want to say pessimistic, but conservative for sure. All right, so here's Nancy. She's been researching anyway for her Walmart stock. So you definitely want to follow Amar's channel. And again, like my man Pulverizer said here, who does not like Pink Floyd, Pulverizer says, we're going to be on here until all of Josh's viewers are on. All right, so exactly. So if you're not on Amar's channel, you need to be so. All right, so you got could you, and Amar, if you got, I'll just, if you can hang in, you can do whatever you want. I'm not sure what your drop dead time is, but if you want to,
I have 10, 15 minutes.
All right. So John from New York City says, could you explain why it doesn't make sense for a single person with a pension to do Roth conversions? My rule of thumb in that regard, and Mar, you can speak in here just a sec, is that you're already in most likely probably a 22% tax bracket, maybe the higher end of the 12. But if you're in the higher end of the 12, the Roth conversions are going to put you in the 22%. And that's a 65% increase right there in marginal tax rates. And if you're already in the 22%, well, it's hard to imagine that you're going to be in a higher than that bracket in the future if you're already on the low end of the 22%. So the point about wanting to do Roth conversions is actually quite simple. Will we, with the family unit, be in a higher tax bracket in the future than we are if we convert money to a Roth? If you're married, the answer is unequivocally most likely yes, which is why the Roth conversions are wonderful to help the spouse avoid the widow's tax trap. If you're single, probably not. Probably not, especially if you have a pension, because you're never going to drop below that pension income plus Social Security. So it's just not a huge benefit of that. You have anything you want to add to that, Amar?
Obviously there's a lot of variables with that. If you're going to move out of New York, if you're going to, what if you get married in the future? What if you, and you don't want to do Roth conversions and not benefit for them because then you're just benefiting the beneficiaries, which you can make argument that they can just pay the tax. There's just too many variables. But for most people, if you're already in a tax bracket and you're not going to drop because you have pension income and Social Security, it's hard to reduce that income. You just have the standard deduction. It probably doesn't make sense just from a planning perspective like that.
Amar, does the aggregation rule apply to company 401k and a solo 401k? I have a separate company for consulting that I've been contributing to in the solo K, like what you have, Amar, and just joined a company 401k. Does the aggregation rule have both? And
the aggregation rule meaning that you can only put 19.5 into total between whatever plans that are out there. And that answer would be yes.
Okay. Gotcha. James's dad was born in Greece. Yep. Big fan. Greece, man. I could handle Greece. What's that island out there called? Crete? Oh, man. They don't let my kind in there, though, but I can handle Greece. Oh, my goodness. A common article about withdrawing retirement accounts early explains it better than I could in a comment. Madfientist.com. Okay. If anyone wants to click on that link, madfientist.com. We got stock 6.5%, 1 to 2%, bonds 2% inflation. All right. Kim says, Amar, if I retire and I have cash for 3 years now, what about selling my home and I get $75,000, then move? Should I keep all my cash and wait to see what the market does? Oh boy. This is a tough one, Amar. Obviously we can't give specific advice here, but what's your, I want to take a swing at some just general ideas here. You can't win at this question, I'm telling you.
Yeah, it's hard, because again, going back to our disclosures earlier, this is supposed to be educational purposes. Kim, if you reach out to me, then maybe we could spend 15, 20 minutes and answer your questions, not on a public forum, if you will.
My at the end of the day, and I would always remember 3 things can happen. The market can go up, it can go down, it can stay sideways. That's it. Only 3 things that can happen. Over the course of 3 years or so, literally, if you look at 2001 and 2, the market went down, and you would have been grateful that you kept the cash. Over the last 5 years, you would have been freaking kicking yourself for keeping the cash. It's literally just a matter of what. Let's put it this way. I still believe in the market in the long run. I literally do. I still believe in equities. I still believe in the silly private capitalism that we have, which is not capitalism. It's more of a fascist state. And that doesn't mean jackboots. It just means we have big government and big corporations taking over America. But you still can make money as a shareholder in these publicly traded private companies. And as such, to wait for the market is a market timing play. And you never win by market timing. You can be lucky, and stop clock and all that. But at the end of the day, Kim, your specific situation will dictate everything. But just on this alone, I'm going to wait to see what the market does before I invest. Yeah. The book is against you. The market goes up more than it goes down historically. As such, you're waiting. You're playing the house as the odds, and you don't. New tax charts, new Roth conversion. Okay, sweet. So Right Capital has updated their tax stuff. That's fantastic, Dan. I don't care what they say. You're all right. Let's see. So we got Kim. We sold a house 3 years ago. Traveled full time in a motorhome. We have 4 to 5 years in cash. We put excess cash in the house and tax with brokers. Yeah, right on, man. That makes sense. Plan to take years between retirement and Social Security to do my conversions and live off my cash reserves. That's 100% the way to go, brother or lady. Figure I can get a fair share of IRA converted at low tax bracket. I don't have any issue with that. That's ideal for sure. Pulverizer says, Kim, you should go all in on Tesla. And I just add Bitcoin to that as well. Tesla and Bitcoin. Amar just said you should do that, by the way. All right, guys. Looks like we're up. Appreciate y'all being here. By all means, make sure you subscribe to Amar's channel. He will be doing it. We'll be here on Wednesday. And that Amar is going to do another video solely on his channel next week, discussing NUA and doing case studies, which I think you'll get a lot out of it. But we'll still be here Wednesday every week, so just put that on your calendar, tattoo it. I think he knows when it's time to leave. Whoa, okay. So I'm going to let you guys go there. Appreciate it, Amar, and I'll holler at you later on. Yeah. Thanks for being here, guys. We'll see y'all. Thank you.
Bye.
All right, buddy. You are. Whoa.